Shalom from Israel. My name is Ronny. I'm an Israel historian and a tour guide who lives and works in Israel. For the last 35 years, guiding groups was my primary occupation, and most of the groups that I enjoyed taking through the country came from the American Christian evangelical world. I do know that there is a lot of interest among evangelical Americans about Israel. I do know that it's hard to stay connected sometimes, and for that reason I thought that having these broadcasts every now and then to give you, friends of Israel, an idea about what happens in the country. It is true that we are part of the globe and we are facing the same challenges as most countries around the world, but Israel is also unique on many levels, and therefore it's an opportunity to shed some light on issues that typify the state of Israel and the way that we are struggling with the pandemic of the coronavirus. Israel responded faster than most countries when the whole thing started. And since we are in a unique situation, we thought that by stopping flights to come from China and South Korea, we may solve the problem. Israel is surrounded by countries, but only 2 have open borders with Israel, and not that many people are coming through. So we thought that by simply stopping flights from these areas will help us to keep the virus out of Israel for as long as possible. We knew it's coming, but the local system was totally unprepared, like most countries around the world, to what was about to come. And therefore we had to buy some time, and the whole idea was that stopping every flight coming from countries that were suspected with that epidemic, that will help us and will buy some time. We cannot stop entry from Israelis, and Israelis like to travel. And once it started, many of them started coming back home, and they brought the virus with them into Israel as well. But as we thought that we may be stopping people from coming in, foreigners will help, we did not know that the virus was in Israel already. A group from South Korea toured the country for several days, and upon their return to South Korea, they were tested in the Seoul's airport, and they were proven to be positive with the coronavirus, which means that they traveled through the country and they came in touch with many Israelis that now were suspected that also carried the virus. They published their routine and the route that they covered, and as a professional tour guide, I was surprised to see how much ground they were able to cover in only a few days. But that's the nature of the South Korean groups. They don't spend much time in each of the sites. They try to cover as much as possible. They literally run from side to side, and that was a disadvantage in this case because they came in touch with so many people all over the country. That was the first sign in Israel, and some people started panicking that maybe it's too late to stop this whole coronavirus pandemic. We responded quickly, but again, it was not the only way that we did. Israel was caught unprepared like most countries around the world. There was a shortage of almost everything, and we now have to catch up. We're not very good in planning ahead. We are very good in improvising. We are very good in learning as we are walking and improving everything we can. So right now, the total of death cases in Israel is 36 people that died from the coronavirus. About 7,000 people were proved to be infected, and tens of thousands, nobody knows the exact number, are quarantined basically. Let me say a few words about what is specific about Israel. So we're going to zoom into the country and speak about some characteristics that Israel has and other countries are not facing the same challenges. It is connected to our demographics. There are 2 groups in the country which are part of the state of Israel that sometimes state authorities has a hard time to communicate with or to try to recruit them to fight for the same struggle or for the same agenda. The first one will be the ultra-Orthodox. About 1 million people in Israel are ultra-Orthodox Jews, and these people live a secluded way of life, and their integration with the rest of society is minimal. Their view of the state of Israel is that Israel, as a secular democracy, cannot be God's will. The Bible speaks about the regathering of the nation back to this country. Many prophets are mentioning that. But their idea is that when it happens, it will happen miraculously over a blink of a second and will bring peace to the area, and the regathering should produce a country which will be a theocracy. And ever since Israel was born, there is not much peace in the region, I'll give them that much. Their claim is that Israel is not God's will. And therefore they totally ignore the state or state authorities, refusing to cooperate with state authorities. And each time there is a crisis and Israel tries to enforce its laws and regulations, it is taken by the ultra-Orthodox as a provocation, as a conspiracy. It's very hard to get their attention or their cooperation. Some of the problems are objective. They live in crowded communities. The families are quite large. It's not uncommon to have a family of 10 children, maybe more, living in a small apartment, and therefore to try to have them indoors all day long for weeks after weeks, it's not going to be easy. But it took us time to get to that level to explain to them that we have to have their cooperation, otherwise it's going to lead to a national crisis. To order a rabbi not to teach Torah, not to go to synagogue, or not to teach his disciples the Talmud in yeshivas, which are religious schools, that will be unheard of. The Jewish world was always about learning, always about studying, and in order to stop doing that in public, that will be a violation of everything that the Jewish people believe in. And therefore, to go to the levels of the commoners and try to convince them to stay home and isolate themselves was impossible. We did not get their cooperation. A month ago, the Jewish world celebrated Purim. Now, Purim is a beautiful holiday, but it's all about large parties and gatherings, the last thing that you want to do in days of coronavirus pandemic. And therefore we had to go to the level of the rabbis and try to convince the rabbis to order their disciples, and they will listen to the rabbis, that this is a must. It's not an option. We speak about matters of life and death here. I think that by now they're getting the point. And by now we see cooperation from the ultra-Orthodox society. It may be a little too late, at least to some of their communities. Their concentration is in two main cities, Jerusalem and the town of Bnei Brak, which is outside Tel Aviv. And the rate of infection in these two cities is more than twice as high as it is in any other city in the country. So now the government is checking a couple of options. We will have to evacuate tens of thousands of people infected in the city of Bnei Brak and try to isolate them in army facilities, maybe in hotels. How can you even tell who is infected and who is not if some of them refuse to take a simple test? Because they will be separated from the families, they won't be able to celebrate Passover, which is coming within days. And therefore that will be a major challenge. But by now, after giving the right orders by the leading rabbis, we see the almost full cooperation. Always some elements that still want to provoke the state and refuse to cooperate. The second group of people will be the local Arabs. About 1.3 million people in the state of Israel are from the Arab world. They're Israelis like anybody else. The Arab society is better integrated into the rest of the state society. They find jobs in every field. They go to universities. We have doctors and lawyers, and they make a contribution to the state as well. But their way of life is also somewhat secluded. They live in large communities. The whole clan lives together. It's a very tribally oriented society. And therefore to try to keep social distancing, as this is the order of these times, will be almost impossible among the Arabs as well. And therefore we have a problem, because the Arab population, some of them, do not cooperate with state authorities, let alone with the Israeli police. There was always an issue between the police and the Arab communities. They were not welcome in these communities, not even to maintain law and order. But now, for the first time, it looks like the Arab population and the Arab society is willing to cooperate. We did not have enough tests among them. We do not know the real numbers of figures among the Arabs. It may rise, no doubt, when we are going to complete that. It's all about gathering the material, gathering the data, having the right statistics. So now it looks like everybody gets the point, and people do understand that this is a matter of life and death. And for the first time ever since Israel was born, we are all facing the same challenge together. And maybe one positive things will come out as a result of that crisis. Time will tell. But for the first time ever, there is no division to classes, no division to religions, no division to ethnic groups. the sense of unity is stronger now than ever before. Now you can tell me, of course, what do you mean a sense of unity? Israel is under so much tension all the time. You are facing security challenges, under attack constantly. How come there was no national sentiment? I'll answer to that for the ultra-Orthodox, they don't care about political or national issues. And for the Arabs, as much as I don't like to say that, some of them are not pro-Israelis. When Israel is under an attack sometimes, they will take the enemy's side. But now, for the first time, we are threatened by an enemy that does have no boundaries and no differences, and maybe for the first time, the whole nation will get together, and this is the situation right now, and that may project on the future as well. I do want to bring this broadcast to conclusion by quoting a verse from the book of Psalms, chapter 29, verse 11. The Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace. Stay safe, watch over yourselves, and may the God of Israel richly bless you all. Thank you.